Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and tonight is our Game Week 42 National League preview and predictions, proudly sponsored by Cards Accepted. So I am back. It's been over 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks since I was last on the podcast. I have to say it's an absolute privilege to be back on and to be able to talk to you guys once again. As always, he fitted in as the temporary host last week. He's back to being just a co-host now. Paul, firstly, how are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, I much prefer to be sat in this seat than your seat, Luke. It was, pressing buttons and worrying about banners and all sort of. Hopefully, we got through it and everyone enjoyed it. But no, I'm glad you're back, and I'll be your wingman, no problem at all. So, good. Hopefully, the coursework's got done all right, Luke, as well.
Yeah, hopefully anyway. But no, I do really appreciate you doing that. And of course to Rob as well, who filled in. He kind of stole your role last week. It was like you got a promotion for a week and then you're back down now to being the co-host. But no, I do appreciate you doing that. I think I need to make it aware to everyone because I don't think we actually did a show the week before that. At the moment, I had the same issue about 2 years ago when I did the podcast. I've got my A-levels and I'm not one of these students, I'll be honest, that can just basically pull all the results out of the bag without revising. I've been revising for the past couple of weeks. Also, coursework, I'm not the best with that, to be honest. So I've been kind of doing extra work to try and get caught up on that so I can get the best grade possible so I can go to uni next year as well. It's been a difficult couple of weeks in terms of workload for me. Also as well, I turned 18 about 2 weeks ago, so I've been celebrating that as well. It is good to be back, and hopefully I can remain consistent within the podcast for the next couple of weeks because, of course, it is probably the busiest time for the podcast. It's the closing point of the season. A lot of things are going to be happening. For me personally as well, apart from the start of the season, it's my favourite time to actually be talking about the National League because it's when everything really is kicking off. But no, Paul, once again, thanks for filling in last week.
No problem at all. Let's see how we get on with the predictions. Now you're back, Luke. But lots to talk about. 5 games to go now. This is really starting to hot up at both ends of the table, isn't it? And it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in the next few weeks.
Please remember to everyone as well to like and subscribe to the podcast. It really does go a long way. And if you'd like to join the channel and become a member, it is just £2.99 a month as well. So, Paul, one positive of me being off for the last couple of weeks, I've come back and there is so much National League to dive into tonight, I should say. One of the major topics I want to talk about tonight is, of course, the relegation battle. I think it's slightly been narrowed down now to a certain amount of teams. I think a lot of sides are slowly but surely escaping that relegation battle. I think if we actually bring the table up, which I will do in a second, I would say there's probably about 6 or 7 teams that are involved in the relegation battle now. I think there's a fair few that are kind of exiting for them, which is a good thing that they're not being involved in the relegation battle for the final 5 games or so. But for your side, you must feel a lot more optimistic now going into these final few games after the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean a massive week for us, Luke. Beating Boston and then nicking that result at Forest Green in the second half. We hung on a little bit in the first half, managed to get a goal just before half time. A definite handball. I think their manager may have sort of described it as being maybe a little bit lucky towards Wealdstone, but I think everyone in the ground knew it was handball. So second half, going down the hill at the Vale, I think we deserved the win in the end, and it kind of played out like I sort of described it would kind of happen, I guess. Forest Green looked like they're going through the motions a little bit, ready for the playoffs. And it was Wealdstone who wanted to win the game more than Forest Green. And Forest Green, a good side, got some really good footballers, and I think they've got the capabilities of turning it on in the playoffs when they have to. So massive week for us, and we go tomorrow to Barnet. On Saturday to Barnet, and then we got 2 huge games against Boston and Maidenhead over the Easter weekend. So the next 3 games really big for Wealdstone, and most of the teams around us have got big games. So it's an interesting 5 games to go.
We're looking as well at those sides that I think are definitely going to go down this season. Of course, Ebbsfleet, it's been confirmed. I think it's been that long. Last time I did a podcast, I don't think it was official that they were going down. But Fylde, it feels like for me, it's heading that way as well for them. They sit 23rd in the league on 39 points. I think this season, I've worked out projected at the moment, you're going to need 50 points to survive. I can't see Files picking up 11 points in 5 games. Consistency has been a major issue for them this season. If you look at some of the victories that they've got some very impressive wins against some of the better sides in the division, including the likes of, I think, Forest Green, they've beaten, Gateshead as well. So they've got a very good record against the better sides. What's letting them down is, only them and Hartlepool are the 2 sides to have lost to Ebbsfleet this season. And, of course, Fylde are one of those sides that lost to them. And, you look back at those results and you'll come to the end of the season and think, they're the games that you've got to be winning. What do you feel the major issue is with Fylde, why they can't remain consistent? Because they can clearly turn it on at times. We've seen that with some of the victories that they've got, but they just can never get a run together.
I don't know. It's really hard to put their finger on because, individually they've got some really good footballers. I don't think it helps. They appointed Kevin Phillips. Was he experienced enough? Was he good enough? They decided he wasn't. They replaced him. That hasn't really come to any sort of benefit to them. And it's really difficult because, like you said, they've got the capabilities of nicking a result and playing well. And with the likes of Nick Horton in their team, they've got a little bit of X factor that can help them do that. But for some reason, they just can't get any consistency. And if you look at the last 5 games, the problem Fylde have got is they got 1 in the last 5 games. Even Maidenhead, Dagenham, Boston, Wealdstone have all got 2 or 3 wins in the draw. They've picked up points and Fylde haven't, right at the wrong time. They needed a strong 5 games, a little bit like the teams above them have. And at the moment, I think you're right, Luke. I think they're going to be the second ones to go down. That they're looking at it 7 points off of safety as we speak, with 5 games to go. In the last 5 games, they've got 3 points. If they continue doing that, they're not going to go down. And they've got hard running as well. So it's a difficult one. But I think Fylde are going to be the second one down, and then it starts to get interesting above them, really, with Maidenhead picking up a win on Saturday off of Tamworth. Tamworth are going to be kicking themselves because we've talked about them wanting to go to the playoffs, and they go and get beaten by Maidenhead, which is a great result for Maidenhead. Dagenham have dropped into the bottom 4, and we've spoken long time, for long periods around Dagenham and their sort of drop. And Boston and Wealdstone have had some really good results lately. So it's really, for me, being a Wealdstone fan, it's not pleasant, but it's good at the same time.
It's good for me, for my side at the moment. I just look down at all the sides involved in the relegation battle, because it has been quite exciting. For me, I do feel like we're getting towards the closing stages of this battle. I think particularly Fylde, for me, they're down now. Look, if we look at the final 5 games or so, walking away, they've just won in midweek, fighting for their lives. They've gone away to Oldham and won there. Halifax at home, fighting for a playoff spot. Rochdale away, another side fighting for a playoff spot, before having to go to a Tamworth side that we still can't eliminate them from getting inside the playoffs this season either. And then on the final day, coming up against the Barnet side, who would have won the division by that point. But you look at those 5 games, and for me, there's no easy game there. I'm not saying there's any easy game in this division, but if we look at some of the sides around them, there's a lot more favourable fixtures than that. So I think Fylde are heading in the direction to go down. As for Maidenhead, they're another side for me. I think every season we always say you can never write them off. I do feel this is the season where they do finally drop. They're 5 points adrift from getting out of the drop zone at the moment. Of course, winning at the weekend against Tamworth, in fact. But for me, they're another side that just haven't been able to get enough consistency this season. A little bit like Fylde. They've got Halifax on Saturday, Woking at home. The only thing that gives me the slight impression that I still think it's doable for them is the fact that you look at these final 3 fixtures, Wealdstone away, Ebbsfleet away, and Boston at home. Would you say it's over for Maidenhead, or do you still think there's a chance of them surviving this season?
No, I don't. Until it's. I mean, I think with Ebbsfleet, they've been 2 points behind Maidenhead. Maidenhead have got I think they're still mathematically in the race. And I think you're right. Those last 3 games, Easter Monday against us, and then Boston, as well as who you say, Ebbsfleet, they've got to be looking at those 3 games as getting 9 points. If they get 9 points, Luke, they've got 50 points. And if you're correct in what you're sort of suggesting, in 50 is going to keep you safe, then they're going to get those. They're going to get there, aren't they? So I think, interestingly, it will go down to the wire unless there's a real freaky set of results over the next couple of weeks where some teams do very well and other teams drop off. But as you can see, they're all playing each other, so they're all going to be dropping points. It's not a case of not being able to stay clear of them. Wealdstone have got Maidenhead and Boston as an example. So, it's you can never write Maidenhead off. You can never write Alan Devonshire off. It's going closer to the wire for them this season than it probably has done the last couple. We thought they were gone a few weeks ago. They pick up an excellent result against Tamworth. So, I don't think we can write them off. They got you guys on Saturday who are going for playoff places. So, that's a tough one to go up to Halifax, but it's the sort of game that they probably will win. And it's just typical of them. So, I don't think we can write Maidenhead off yet. Getting that win is going to give them a massive amount of confidence.
Yeah, it certainly will. I think for me, when I look at Maidenhead overall this season, I think you go across the squad. I think it's a better squad particularly going forward, than what we've seen in previous years. Sean Mikulski scored a good amount of goals for them. Got the likes of Smith as well. Tristan Abraham's coming in. He's another player for me that, and a very well-established National League striker. The issue has been, of course, and it's clear here, is the amount of goals that Maidenhead have conceded. And something that I've always looked at Maidenhead, and I think they pride themselves on, is the fact that they've always been pretty strong defensively and had this ability to be able to grind out games. If you look at some of the fixtures this season, there has been games where they've just been fully turned over. And for me, I'm looking at the final 5 fixtures. They're going to have to win all of those must-win games, and that is Wealdstone, Ebbsfleet and Boston. They have to get maximum points for me, because they've got Halifax on Saturday away. You could say that might be an opportunity for them. Halifax not on the best of form, working at home. I just think, can I really see them remaining consistent enough to getting 3 wins out of those final 5 games at least? For me personally, no. So I think Maidenhead, they're another side that I think will go down this season. As for Dagenham, this is the one that I think, if I was a Dagenham fan, would frustrate me the most, is the fact that they've kind of thrown it away themselves this season. They should never have been in this position. Ben Strevens, first half of the season, doing an okay job. I think the squad overall were probably where it should have been under Ben Strevens when you look across the squad, but they should never have been in the position that they're in now. And I think you just look, I think from top to bottom, I think the players have to take responsibility for the position they're in. I think the board have to as well, for getting rid of Ben Strevens when it wasn't particularly necessary. And then I also think Lewis Wright as well, although he's very young, I think he's got to take responsibility as well. Lewis Young, I should say, has to take responsibility, because Ben Strevens was clearly getting a tune out of them enough to be able to comfortably survive this season. And ever since Lewis Young's come in, it's just gone downhill, hasn't it, for Dagenham?
Yeah, it has. And it's they've been victims of probably some off-field issues as well, by the looks of it. There doesn't seem to be any cohesion. They sacked their director of football after a short period of time, and he got a lot of flack off the fans in relation to probably some of the recruitment and the I guess the atmosphere and everything else that was at the club when he was in charge there. So yeah, listen, they go down to National League South. They're going to be a strong team in that league. They don't want to be going down. I think they just need to do anything they can to survive and dust themselves down and go again next summer. And will they replace Lewis Young with someone more experienced? Who knows? So it's a tough one for them, because they definitely are the ones. Them and Solihull are the ones that have been on a bit of a nosedive, and it's a shame to see that with Dagenham, because they're a perennial National League team and normally knocking on the door of the playoffs, and to be knocking on the door of the relegation trapdoor is not something they're used to, and that might not help them in the running.
Yeah, if we look at the final couple of games for Dagenham as well, Hartlepool at home on Saturday, Hartlepool in good form. Ebbsfleet at home, that is a must-win. before playing Braintree, who have, of course, just beaten Barnet and on fairly decent form themselves. And then the final 2 fixtures, Altrincham at home, fighting for a playoff spot, before coming up against Solihull on the final day away from home. I think it's doable for them to survive, like Maidenhead. I think there's a mixed amount of fixtures in there. I just feel, I look at, if they'd have, let's say, had Lewis Young for the whole season and they'd have been playing like they have done since Christmas, they would be they'd be fully down already now, if we're being honest. You look at the victories that they've got as well. Beating Maidenhead at home and beating Halifax. You know, Halifax were on awful form at the time. Well, are on awful form. Also had a massive amount of injury. It's probably not the same Halifax side as what we saw early on in the season. So they probably played a side like that at the right time. Defeated Maidenhead, yes, you've got to win those sort of games. But again, it's against Maidenhead. And since then, they've gone up to Gateshead, who I'm still not particularly sold on the fact that they're back as such. I don't think it's the same team as it was before Christmas. And I think they probably had an opportunity there, particularly in that second half, to be able to get something out of that game. And they didn't take it. So for me, I'm struggling to see a reason why Dagenham may survive this season, particularly when we move on to Boston. Now, this Boston side has picked up 31 points in 17 games. They're well on track to survive. It's actually in their hands now to survive. You look at Boston's remaining fixtures as well coming up. They've got, if we look here, they've actually got Boston. They've got Altrincham at home, Wealdstone at home, Solihull away, Gateshead at home before having Maidenhead away. There's probably 4. I think every single fixture is a winnable game for them. Where I could see him winning it. I don't know what your thoughts are on Boston. Would you back them to survive now? Because I certainly would.
Yes, on their current form, I think. Yeah, looking at their recent record, I know they've lost 2 in 5. One of them was against Wealdstone, and that was a massive win for us because, you know, Boston had won sort of the last 11 or were unbeaten in the last 11, and I think we were talking just after Christmas that we were expecting them to have to rely on other results. And to be honest with you, Luke, they've not relied on other results. They've relied on themselves, and they've gone out and they've really pulled themselves up. And Graham Coughlin has done amazingly well for them. I think you're right. I think they will survive because they're just on a good run of form. Massive game for us on Good Friday when we go up and visit them. Old foes from back in the 1980s sort of National League when it was the Gola League, etc. So that should be a really good game. I'm looking forward to that. And, you know, I think that will go a long way to see who secures safety maybe a bit earlier between the two teams. But yeah, I can see, but I mean, the ones I feel for are Solihull, Dagenham, and Maidenhead, to be honest, because of their form and maybe who they're playing. But you can't count any of those teams from maybe Woking down at the moment. It's so tight, and I think, you know, someone's commented on here. I think it was Mickey saying, you know, the teams are going to cut each other's throats. It's just the nature of the league at the moment, and anyone can beat anyone on their day, and that's been proven with Braintree beating Barnet at the weekend, which no one saw coming. You know, so it's it's a tough one to call in the sense of who is it, and I suppose you have to look. I guess after Easter weekend is where we're going to be more inclined, because that's 3 games in. You've then only got 2 to go, and then people really start to be panicking about what the situation they're in.
Now, I want to finally speak about Wealdstone. I'm sure we'll move on to Solihull as well as the podcast progresses, potentially work. And I don't think they're mathematically out of it as of yet. I think they're still going to have to pick up another win for them to survive this season, or a draw at least. But when I look at Wealdstone and I look at Boston as well, I actually think compared to Dagenham, and this may be a little bit disrespectful to Wealdstone and Boston, if you go from top to bottom of the squads, I think Dagenham overall have probably got a better set of players in terms of ability. But what Wealdstone and Boston do have is playing together as a team. And that's something that they've been able to produce this season, particularly looking at Boston. Wealdstone, yes, going forward, they've got Alex Reid, probably when you can get a tune out of him, one of the best strikers in the division. When you can get a tune out of him, which Wealdstone certainly have, and it's been a success, that move. And he's probably one of the major reasons why Wealdstone do go on to stay up this season. It is because of him. But I think across the board, Wealdstone and Boston both play very well as a team, particularly since the turn of the new year for Boston. As for Dagenham, it's been the complete opposite. If you look at some of the players they've got, Justin Rees, they've got Dion Pereira, Umera as well. I know you're not a massive fan of him, but, he's a striker that can clearly score goals as well. There's a number of players in that squad that are good quality footballers. And for me, you have to look across that squad and think, why on earth are Dagenham in the position that they're in at the moment? At the start of the season, I was contemplating whether to put Dagenham actually inside the playoffs. I think I had them 10th. And for the first quarter, they were competing towards the top, and they've just very, very badly dropped off compared to how they were doing at the start of the season. And for me, I don't just think you have to say, oh, Dagenham, they don't have the squad to survive. I don't think that's the case. I just don't think they're being managed right. I don't think it's going right off the field at the moment as well with the ownership. And they're just making bad decisions after bad decisions, I think, year on year. And I think this will be the final blow for Dagenham if they do go down, which, in my opinion, is going to happen, because I can't see them being able to pull out the results to be able to survive this season. But as a Wealdstone, I speak about them being good as a team. That's certainly something they have done. I don't think across the board this Wealdstone side is as good as some of the sides around them that could potentially go down, but they're finding ways to pull out results. Defeating Forest Green at home, you look at both squads. Forest Green have a better squad, yet Wealdstone have found a way to win. Going away to Altrincham, winning there. They're grinding out results, and that's something a side like Wealdstone have certainly got to do. And, when you've got a striker like Alex Reid who's scoring the amount of goals he is doing, it's just the icing on the cake there. And I think I'd have to back Wealdstone to survive in this position now, because they've got 5 games to go. And if I'm being honest, they probably need a win and a draw to confirm it. I'm sure you won't be getting too ahead of yourself, but I think things are certainly looking up for Wealdstone at the moment.
I think you're right. I mean, if you look at Solihull and Wealdstone, you're 5 points clear of the drop with 5 games to go. If you're going to muck it up, want for a better phrase, then you've only got yourself to blame, because they've got themselves in a position not to go down. But yeah, it's difficult. Listen, we've been very lucky. Alex Reid has been a real fillip for us. Bear in mind, he scored 20 goals in the National League. He didn't play very much in January. He didn't join Wealdstone till October. To have him up front with Tyler Walker is something that's probably the strengthened the Wealdstone squad compared to other areas where I believe they've probably been weakened since they've been in the National Leagues. They've got some weaker players in certain positions than they have previously. But yeah, listen, Alex Reid has been superb for us. We're very lucky to have him. I think he appreciates the love he gets. He appreciates the fact he's getting game time. He's showing that in his performances. And what I like about Alex Reid is he's taking chances and goals when they need to be taken, and they're match-defining moments. He's not scoring the 5th of a 5-0 win or something like that. He's scoring winning goals or getting goals that get us sort of draws. So, that's what you want from your striker. And, I don't think for 1 minute we'll have him next year, so we'll enjoy him for the next 5 games. Hopefully he stays fit. And, he helps us stay in the National League, because, I think that's what we all want as Wealdstone fans. It's what we need for our future because of investment potential and new ground, etc. So, it's a really important next 5 games for us.
3 goals in his previous 2 games. That's the reason Wealdstone got maximum points out of those 2 games. They were the match winners. I think that has to be across the board, probably the National League signing of the season overall, because of the impact that it's had there at Wealdstone, particularly if they do go on to stay up, which, like you've mentioned, I think if Wealdstone didn't stay up from this position now, they'd only have themselves to blame with the remaining fixtures. We might as well quickly speak about Solihull before we do come to the comment section, but you would like to think with them sitting on 48 points, they only need 1 more win in 6 games to survive. You'd like to think they'll be able to do that, but that certainly may not be the case this season. They've picked up 7 points in 15 matches, and that is since the turn of the new year. That is the worst form in the division. Even Ebbsfleet have picked up more points than Solihull have since the new year. And of course, that's happened ever since Matthew Taylor came into the job. When Matthew Taylor firstly was appointed as the Solihull coach. I think a lot of eyebrows were raised across the division. I think a lot of people felt that it was undeserved from Taylor. He hadn't done enough in his managerial career overall to warrant that role. I thought when they appointed him, they may slip outside of the playoffs. I didn't expect them to have such a drop-off like they certainly have done at the moment. And I think there's one major reason for that, and is that the squad's not being coached right. Is that something you'd agree with? And do you think Solihull could go down?
Yes, I'm not sure they will, but I'd laugh my socks off if they did, because they've appointed an absolute clown of a manager. We had to endure him for the first half of our season at Wealdstone. The guy just doesn't know the National League, doesn't give the impression he wants to know the National League, doesn't know National League players. I think he wants to spend more time on the golf course than he does managing a football club. And you've only got to look at his managerial record, especially this season in the National League, and he's absolutely dreadful. The guy has put Wealdstone, he left Wealdstone in the bottom 4. Not even David Noble did that last year, and he wasn't brilliant as a manager in that short period he was with us. Matthew Taylor has ruined 2 football clubs this season, ruined the season. You look what Solihull did. They sacked, or they lost Andy Wing. Andy Wing went to Barrow, and they made that statement around getting someone in who's got the same ideas as them and pushing on. The only place they're pushing on to at the moment is the National League North, and that's all down to Matthew Taylor and his inability to manage a National League football team. That all you want from a manager is someone to put a little bit of a graft in, a little bit of a shift, and show a little bit of passion and ambition for the football team they're managing. He doesn't do that at any place he goes to, and it's been proven because of what he actually hasn't done. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Wealdstone or Solihull will go down. But you imagine if 2 of those teams went down, I don't believe there'll be many managers in the history of football that have contributed to the relegation of the 2 football teams in one season. The guy is just not very good at what he does. Might be a very nice bloke. I've been told he can be very arrogant and very aloof. Might be a very nice bloke. Might be very good at golf. He was very good at football. He's not very good at managing. And I think Solihull will need to replace him if they want to get back in those playoffs, because he's ruined another football team.
If you look at the remaining fixtures as well for Solihull, I'm actually going to put them up here just to highlight the final couple of fixtures. Southend away, a tough place to go. Tamworth away, another side looking to get inside a playoff spot potentially this season, before playing against Boston, who you couldn't get further away from 2 sides if you tried in terms of their attitude towards the National League this season. Boston fighting for their lives with a squad that probably, in my opinion, is overachieving compared to a Solihull side that you look at the squad across the board should be looking to finish inside the playoff spots. Yet the squad across the board, as far as I'm concerned, their attitude's disgusting. And I think the manager has to take a major amount of responsibility for that, because prior to Taylor coming in, Solihull actually made a statement about them underachieving this season when they were just outside the playoffs under Andy Wing. You speak about that being an underachievement. Look, since he's come in, and I can't believe he's still within a job of Solihull. I think they've clearly gone into this appointment in quite a desperate fashion, just looking to appoint the first manager that comes along. And the fact that I think they will have had to actually pay a fee to Wealdstone to, I wouldn't even class it as a steal, but actually to take him off Wealdstone's hands is just ironic, because I think it's the best decision Wealdstone could have ever have made, accepting that. Looking as well, Boston, York away, probably the second toughest fixture in the league, particularly with it being away. Rochdale at home, fighting for the playoffs before playing against a Dagenham side. And I could see this match being the decider between these 2 clubs, because these are 2 clubs that should be nowhere near the drop zone this season. Yet I think one of them will go down this season. They should survive Solihull still, even though they've only picked up 7 points in 15 games. You'd like to think they can find a win out of those last 6 fixtures, but I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest.
No, it's a tough one, and I feel for the Solihull fans, because they've got to Wembley the last couple of years, and Andy Wing is going to prove himself as a very good manager at Barrow, and he's right to have moved on to improve himself. But Solihull have got to do something massive in the summer to get back to where they were previously, because a lot of the hard work has probably been undone in the second half of this season. But one of those things. It's they'll learn, and I'm sure they'll bounce back.
I think you could do a better job, Paul, if you were appointed in the position Solihull were in. Do you think if you went in there, they'd be where they are now?
What? I think we with all due respect to anyone who's on this podcast, will listen to this podcast, they like National League. They know National League. They love the National League. They follow the National League. You're one step ahead of Matt Taylor because he doesn't know anything about the National League. He doesn't know anything about players, and that was borne out when we watched Wealdstone. He had no idea. It took him 15 games to decide what his first 11 was. He was putting players in different positions every week. Any of us on this pod would do a better job than him, because we know what the National League is about, and we know what is needed to win football matches in this National League game, in this National League. I'm telling you, I promise you. So, we'll have to wait and see. He might keep them up. He might send them down, but I'd be very surprised if he's in a job next year.
What as well is even worse for him, and particularly on his CV after this, I think he's going to struggle to get any job in football, if I'm being honest, as a manager. But he's actually been backed by the owners. When they've been on a bad run of form, they've actually brought in more players for him, that you can tell by them being players from the higher levels, that are players that he's probably asked for as well, who've come in since. Of course, Reece Hall-Johnson came from Barnet on loan, and they've brought in Joe Dudu, who's previously been the likes of Doncaster, Burton, quite a high caliber football. He's played for Rangers in the past. The likes of Manny Dooku's come on loan as well for them, actually signed for them, coming from Hednesford as well. So for me, overall, there's no excuses for him, I don't think, at all. I think he's got to take full responsibility for this. And if they do go down this season, I think Matthew Taylor has to be regarded as probably the worst National League manager in history. But yeah, we're going to come on to the live comments, because I know we haven't even spoke to anyone on here tonight, and that's something that we want to do. And then we will get on with the predictions. We've got Lee, who's currently joined us tonight. Welcome to the stream, Lee. Mickey, of course, is with us tonight. Welcome, Mickey. Colin's with us as well. Hi, guys. Nice to see you, Luke. It's good to be back as well, Colin. We've had Jay, who said, can Wealdstone win on Saturday, please? He'll be hoping for that. I think if Wealdstone did manage to somehow defeat Barnet, then it would make things a little bit more interesting for the final few games of the season. We've also had Mickey, who's come in and said, Newcastle uni for you, Luke. Belated birthday, young Luke. Was my daughter's 18th yesterday. I hope you had a good one, Luke. Happy birthday to your daughter as well, Mickey. Unfortunately, I'm not academic enough to get into Newcastle University, although I've got a few mates who will be travelling up there, so I may be stopping over next year. You never know. Caroline's in, of course, a channel member. She said, good evening, Luke. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Football will still be here. And then we've also had Christopher, who's come in, Paul.
Even though a much-needed win for the Heat on Saturday, 5 big finals to go. Yeah, they've sort of stopped the slide a little bit, haven't they? And hopefully that will help them for the next 5 games to stay in that playoff place.
We've also had Emma Mira, I think I've pronounced that right. Come on, you bees, and welcome to the stream. Collins also said, Fylde have got the hardest running. They certainly have, and they've not been consistent all season, not being able to pick up 11 points in 4 games. So there's nothing to suggest now that they'll be able to do that either. AJ's come in, Paul.
Barnet lost a game of football. No pressure, though. Bad day at the office for the Bees. If they win on Saturday, it is in their hands. And if York drop points, and then it would be settled. It is already, but yes, it's. I've got a friend who watches York home and away, and he suggested that the whole of York are behind Barnet or behind Wealdstone on Saturday, because obviously they want Barnet to lose. That was a blip for Barnet, wasn't it? It's a bad day at the office. I don't know whether Dean Brennan got things slightly wrong. I don't know whether it was all off days, a mixture of everything. But Barnet are going to win the league. It's just a matter of time as to when. If Wealdstone do get an improbable result on Saturday and York win, it closes to 5 points. It gets a little bit more pressure on them. But I think it's a matter of time as to when they do it, rather than the fact that they will do it. I think they will do it. So it's it goes to show no team's invincible, and Barnet have had a brilliant season, and sort of move on from that one and big sort of derby game on them for Saturday live on the television.
The football fans, football interviews is coming. Evening, lads. Hope you're both well. We are both well. Thank you very much. And then we've also had who's come in tonight. We've also had, as I scroll down here, Bailey is with us, another Barnet fan, I believe. Oh no, Tamworth fan, I think. Yeah, big up, lads, up the Tamworth. Solid season for us. And when we lost last week, I said playoffs over, but we're still in it. 4 points behind, and hope Solly will go down. Alison as well has joined us tonight, and she said, "Come on, York! I'm so proud of what they have achieved this season already." Of course, it has been a great season for the Minstermen. Even if they don't go up, I think we have to admit it has been a great season. To everyone else, let us know who you feel is actually going to go down this season. And before we do get on to the predictions, let's, of course, take a look at the scores on the doors. Of course, I wasn't present last week, so this wasn't me predicting my results. It was, of course, Rob, who every time I think he's ever come on has always beaten me. And then when he has been on my side, he's not had the best of weeks compared to you, Paul. 13 points. That's one of the channel's best ever results, I think. So fair play to you.
Yeah, I actually got 4 scores correct. I don't think I've ever done that before, and one result right. So yeah, I was pleased with that. More luck than judgment, I don't know, but it pulls me within 5 points of you, Luke. So 5 points behind with 5 games to go. So let's just see. It's game on again in the race for this as well.
Yeah, of course, there's title races in the division. There's a title race in the division. You could still say that may be over, but this certainly one isn't. And it was looking like it was over until a couple of weeks ago, and you've managed to pull it back now. Points only Paul now, only 5 points in it now. So you never know. You could be overtaking me this week if you have a game week like you did in the previous one. Anyway, let's get on with the predictions. I forgot to mention as well, before I do that, of course, your page does sponsor the Predictions League.
Yeah, that's it. No worries. Yeah, if anyone needs a holiday, give us a shout. I'm certainly going to need a holiday at the end of this National League campaign. So I'm more than happy to help anyone get themselves into a bit of sun and somewhere different from well, not a bad England at the moment in terms of weather, is it? So give us a shout and we'll be happy to help.
West has come in tonight and said, "Come on, you shots." Of course, they've secured a spot to Wembley for the first time in their history. So congratulations to everyone involved at Aldershot. Mickey's come in and said, "Ebbsfleet, Fylde, Maidenhead and Daggers, the current bottom 4 for him to go down." And then Stingstone's come in and said, "Bottom 4 to stay the same. Lots of money continuing to filter down to step 2. Yeah, for me, I look at form, which I think is crucial at this point in the season, and there's nothing to suggest that any of the bottom 4 are going to get out of it. The one side that I am keeping my eye on is Solihull potentially going down because they've got a difficult end to the season, and I'm not sure where they're going to be able to get this victory to confirm a spot in the National League next season. As for Wealdstone and Boston, I think they're both heading in the right direction to secure a spot. We didn't speak much about Woking. They're going to need probably a draw or win, probably a win to mathematically secure it. I'd like to think they're going to be able to do it in the remaining 5 fixtures for them. Is that something you'd agree with, Paul, or do you not think they're out of the question of dropping down?
No, I think Woking will be okay. Listen, the big one was that they unfortunately lost their semi-final to Aldershot, didn't they, on Saturday? They were able to bounce back immediately at the week on Tuesday night and win a game. And I think that was hugely important for them because what you didn't want is that semi-final to defeat to affect their league form. They've done very, very well. And they've been able to sort of set themselves up to stay up, and I think they'll stay up. Neil Ardley's got them sort of playing and defensively strong. Even the game on the weekend, it took Aldershot to the 91st minute to get the winning goal. So I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'd like to think so as well. Moving on to the first fixture then. Of course, it's your boys. It's a North London derby in the National League. It's Barnet versus Wealdstone. A proper fierce derby, this one, I think, between both sets of supporters. A couple of weeks ago, you could say it would be potentially a straightforward victory for Barnet, but with Wealdstone's recent form, of course, defeating the likes of Forest Green, Barnet slipping up against Braintree. Is this a potential banana skin for the Bees?
Yeah, listen, potentially, because when you look at derby games of rivals. Sometimes form can go out the window a little bit. I think Wealdstone are going to go into it with an awful lot of hope and positivity. But I think Barnet are going to have to look at this and say, look, Wealdstone are definitely there for the beating, and as long as they play as well as they can, I don't think Wealdstone can win the game. But who knows? Who knows, Luke? Who knows? I can't see Barnet losing the game. I've actually gone for a 2-2 draw. I think that's more heart than head in terms of that. We haven't done so badly down at the Hive, and I think hopefully that will continue, because as much as Barnet have got enough to play for to try and win the league as soon as they can, Wealdstone have to try and do what they can to get as many points to get to that 50-51 mark to stay up. So both teams are going into it wanting something out of their own season. So I've gone with a 2-2 draw. Should be a good game, and it'd be nice to see a big crowd there. I know Barnet are starting to get bigger crowds as they're doing well, which is great to see, because you want a bit of atmosphere. So yeah, I'm going with 2-2.
Put your predictions in, guys, as well throughout the podcast. We've got a few coming in here as well. As for me, I look at Wealdstone and I definitely think you're going to survive this season, but I think they have to see this as one of their free hits. I don't think there'll be too much riding on this result for them. I think they've done enough in previous weeks to see this as a free hit, which is a good thing. You look at Barnet at home. You can never not back Barnet at home this season. They're unbeaten at home. They've only dropped points at home this season in 3 fixtures. I think they're probably just going to have a little bit too much for Wealdstone, so I'm going to go for a 2-0 Barnet win. But as I've mentioned, I don't think it'll be the end of the world for Wealdstone. I think they'll be looking at the likes of Boston, Maidenhead, and even potentially the final 2 games against Southend as Halifax as games where they can win those instead of this one. Of course, for bragging rights as well, they'd love to win this one as well. I think the good thing for you is the fact that a couple of weeks ago, it was actually possible for Barnet to win the league in this fixture if everything went to plan. As for you, what is good is the fact that there's no title riding on this game, so you're not going to be there watching your fierce rivals go on to win the league.
No, that's right. And if it had been that way, it'd have been that way. But yeah, that's not going to happen. And we're not going down, but having to play them there either. So I suppose I don't think really that's far from the thoughts of sorry, it's further from the thoughts of fans of both teams than maybe some others would suggest. But listen, it should be a good game. It's live on telly. Barnet are good at home. Wealdstone are fighting for their lives. So hopefully it'll be a good spectacle for those that are tuning in.
Moving on to the next one then. Boston, we've already mentioned their recent form since Christmas, in fact. 31 points in 17 games. Coming up against an Altrincham side that have certainly been in mixed form recently, but they did get back to winning ways, defeating Yeovil at home. Not the prettiest. I managed to tune in for a little bit of that one, but what is crucial for Altrincham is they actually found a way to win, and they're very much still within a chance of finishing inside the playoffs. How do you preview this one?
I'll go with the Boston win. Altrincham, they're doing okay, aren't they? I think they're still hanging in there, but they haven't lost in the last 3, but they've only won 1 in 5. And that for a team that are trying to get into the playoffs, I think their form has been very, very patchy recently, and they aren't playing at home. I know their pitch isn't great, but they're playing a Boston team that are, again, fighting for their lives and are in a massively brilliant run of form. So I've gone with the Boston 2-1 win, which will hopefully please Halifax and Gateshead fans and Rochdale fans, because they're going to be fighting for those sort of playoff places above them.
I think for Altrincham, what's crucial now is that players are coming back from injury for them. Isaac Marriott's been out injured. He's come back. Regan Lynn is now back. He's crucial. I think we've seen in recent weeks in Altrincham's form how crucial he is for them. Alex Newby's been out injured. They're like the perfect duo for Altrincham that produce all the goals. So to have those two back, I think, is going to be massive in the final couple of games of the season. Boston, of course, losing to you guys. Getting back to winning ways away from Aldershot in midweek is a huge result for them. Not the greatest home form this season if you look at Boston. I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for this one. I think Altrincham are slowly but surely returning back to their old selves, and I don't think it'd be a bad point for either side. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for this one. Remember to put all your predictions in, guys, and we will be putting them on the screen. If you want to play along as well, it's 3 points for getting the exact result correct. For example, Boston v Altrincham, if it did end up being 1-1, then I get 3 points. If, let's say, they still drew 2-0, 2-2, I should say, between the two sides, I'd get 1 point. And if, let's say, either Boston or Altrincham win that game, then I get 0 points. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. But that is how you get your points. Moving on to the next one, Dagenham versus Hartlepool. Hartlepool, for me, I think going in form that they haven't been in all season. They've recently brought in a young lad on loan that I'll be honest, I hadn't have heard of before he came to Hartlepool, but wow. I've seen some of his highlights reels since he's come in, and him actually in the flesh versus Halifax, and that lad's going to the top, and that is, I think it's Reyes Cleary. For any Hartlepool fans that are here, or for anyone that's played against this lad, I'll go as far to say I've never seen a player, or a winger, I should say, in this division do some of the things with the ball that he was doing against the Sherman and what he has done in recent weeks. He's a quality player, and against the Dagenham side that clearly low on confidence, looking like they're heading in one direction, not just because of him, but because of how Hartlepool are playing as a whole. I can see Hartlepool going here and winning. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Hartlepool result win. If you look at Hartlepool as well, 3 wins on the spin, beating Boston, beating Halifax, and beating Ebbsfleet. They're on good form at the moment, and it is looking up, I suppose, for Hartlepool compared to how it was looking a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, 3 wins on the spin, unbeaten in 5. I think they'll be able to go to Dagenham and get all 3 points. I'm going for a 1-0 Hartlepool win. How do you see it going?
I've gone for exactly the same, actually, Luke. It's I think you're right. Hartlepool probably left it a bit too late to get into the playoffs, but they're showing that a great sort of run of form, and the teams above them. There's a suggestion that no one really wants to grip onto those playoff places, and Hartlepool have got to look at it and say, well, they win on Saturday. They're at 58 points. Some of the others drop some points. They're in with the shout, possibly last 3 or 4 games of getting in the playoffs. So they're going to be going there wanting to win on a great run of form. Dagenham, we've spoken about Dagenham tonight. They've dropped into the bottom 4. I can't see them winning against Hartlepool. So, like you, I've gone with I can't see it being a very interesting game. Low scoring 1-0 win.
Moving on to the next one, Ebbsfleet versus Sutton. Speaking about games that will be interesting, I don't think this is one. Ebbsfleet already confirmed that they're going down. As for Sutton, absolutely nothing to play for. I'll get my prediction out here. Ebbsfleet scored a fair amount of goals in recent weeks, been a bit unfortunate in some of the results, not probably picking up the results that they would have liked, but I think they're certainly showing improvements compared to how they were doing. Defeating Fylde, getting a draw against Aldershot, draw against Altrincham, and then of course losing to Hartlepool like they did must be disappointing as well in the final minute. But in those 3 games, they've actually scored 7 goals, which is pretty impressive considering they only picked up 2 points in those games. For this one, I'm going to go for another draw. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with the 1-1 draw. I think, although I've just sort of said, Dagenham could sneak into that playoffs. Sutton are on the same amount of points. I don't think Sutton are in the same sort of run of form, aren't they? And I can't see this being the most exciting game. To be fair, Sutton did beat Rochdale on Tuesday night, so they're going to probably, until it's mathematically impossible, they're going to probably still push for what they can. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. You're right. I mean, Ebbsfleet have scored an impressive amount of goals considering they're bottom of the league. They just don't seem to be able to let the goals stay out of their goal. So, hence why they got a couple of high-scoring draws, where sometimes if they're better defensively, they could have been into wins. So, it could be a higher scoring draw than what I've put, but I've gone with 1-1.
Moving on to the next fixture, it's my side up against Maidenhead. Probably not the prettiest match on paper, but what I will say, it's a huge match for both sides. Maidenhead, I think, will be coming into this one needing not only a point, but getting all 3 points. And as for Halifax, they certainly need to get back to winning ways. Yes, injuries has been a major issue for them, particularly in recent weeks. but they've got to find a winning formula again, like they have done in the first half. Well, in the first 2/3 of the season. It's such a shame, not just for me personally as a Halifax fan, but to see a side like Halifax slip away due to the amount of injuries that they've got. I'd like to be able to see them have a shot inside the playoffs. And if you look at the previous 5 games, 2 points in those games, they've actually only scored in one of those 5 games as well, which of course came against Eastleigh. It is slightly concerning, but it is still very much in our hands as a Halifax fan to be able to finish inside the playoffs this season. And I just hope that we can get over the line. And I think this has to be a game that, for me as a Halifax fan, I look into as a must-win. Drawing at Eastleigh at the weekend didn't particularly play well, but it was good to see that we could find an opportunity to be able to score late on like we did do and managed to get a point out of that game, even though, if I'm being honest, we probably didn't deserve it. I look at this one and I have to say we've got to find a way to win against Maidenhead. It's crucial. The fixtures are in our favour. We've got Fylde away, of course, Maidenhead, Braintree, Wealdstone, and of Altrincham as well. You look at all those games and we're above at every single side. So I'd like to think that we can do enough to finish inside the playoffs this season. And I think this has to be one of those games that we win to tighten our grip on a playoff spot. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Halifax win. I just think we have to find a way to win. I don't care how. Just get the 3 points at 5 o'clock. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-1 win to Halifax. I think when you look at the predicament Halifax may find themselves in, Luke, it's not necessarily the points, but their goal difference. It is the smallest in that playoff sort of quartet, if you like. And, I think if Halifax can pull out a decent win against Maidenhead, get 2 or 3 goal difference, it's going to help them massively, because it could come down to goal difference, a bit like the bottom four rather. So it's a win. It's a game that Halifax have to look at this and say, we've got to get the points. We're at home. We're against a team that are in the bottom 4. Yes, they won at the weekend. Yes, we've only got 2 points out of the last 5. But you're right. They're in a position here where they can only drop out of the playoffs because of their form, because no one else seems to be looking at wanting to sort of go above Halifax or Oldham. Or it's a really odd one, those sort of positions 4 to 8 or 9. No one seems to want to sort of go in there. So Halifax have got to win. When you look at some of the other teams who they're playing, this is a winnable game for Halifax, and they've got to earmark that as the 3 points for them.
I worked out earlier today that you can actually put a squad of 11, a starting lineup of 11 of the amount of injuries that Halifax have got. Sam Johnson out injured, the main goalkeeper. For me personally, people will argue the best goalkeeper in the division. He's been the most consistent over the past 7 years. People will put forward Harrison Mayle, but he hasn't done it for as long as what Sam Johnson has. Also, the likes of Will Smith out injured, one of the best centre-halves. Cummins, Arthur. That's 3 centre-halves out injured for Halifax this season. Before we've even moved on to the midfield of having Scott High and Jack Evans out injured, they're 2 big losses as well. And I've not even spoke about the players that we've actually lost who've moved on to other clubs. Andrew Oluwabori, I think, was probably the poster boy of Halifax for that first half of the season. He's moved on to Exeter. And then Billy Waters returning. His loan was terminated. He's then moved on to Oldham. We've been very unfortunate with the amount of injuries that we've had. We've got a very low budget, and I just think it'd be such a shame if we didn't finish inside the playoffs, because this squad certainly does deserve it. They've put a lot of effort in. It's just finding that winning formula again, getting that identity back about us with the new players, and I just hope the new players can embed in and we can get over the line, have a shot of getting promoted via the playoffs. I don't think we'll be able to do it. I was a little bit more confident a couple of months ago, but I think with the amount of injuries, I think we're going to struggle. But I've got to keep the faith, and I think this is a game for me where it is a must-win. So hopefully we can get over the line. Moving on to the next one, Rochdale versus Eastleigh. For me, I think Eastleigh have blown their chances of finishing inside the playoffs after dropping points to Halifax last week. They played Halifax off the park, if I'm being honest, and they still didn't manage to win that game. And for me, overall, you look back at those games where you're playing against sides that are there for the taking, and I think that's been the issue for Eastleigh all season, is that they're not winning games that they should. They're not consistent enough, and they're coming up against the Rochdale side that I think are well on track to finishing inside the playoffs this season. Losing in midweek, yes, but I think they'll have too much for Eastleigh. I'm actually going to go for, I believe I actually went for a 3-2 Rochdale win, both sides capable of scoring goals. So I think it'll be quite a high scoring one. I'm going to go for a 3-2 Rochdale win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 3-1 Rochdale win. I think you're right. It's Eastleigh going to be kicking themselves, weren't they? Because it was only a few weeks ago, Luke, we were talking about how they were knocking on the door of the playoffs, and they've done exactly what Eastleigh do. It's such an Eastleigh thing. They've decided that they're going on a run of 5 games where they haven't won a game. And you look at those, they played, like you said, they played Halifax off the park and only drawn. They were 3-0 up against Wealdstone. They drew 3-3. They've lost to Tamworth, they've lost to Southend, and they've lost to Oldham. So they have had some tough fixtures, but they're the teams you need to be getting points off and trying to take away from them as well to be in that playoff. So you imagine if they had turned those draws into wins, that would be 4 points. A couple of those losses, they'd had 6 points. All of a sudden, they'd be 7th, 8th, 9th. As it is, they're now 13th, and they've got nothing to play for. So Rochdale have got everything to play for. They've got that game in hand. They've got a good goal difference. My worry for Rochdale, though, Luke, is they've lost to Spennymoor in the playoffs in penalties. So they've had to play an extra, unless you can correct me, they've had to play extra time, then they've had penalties. They've then gone and lost in midweek after being, to Sutton, who've got really nothing to play for. I fear that Rochdale, hopefully they don't drop off a little bit after that Spennymoor loss, because I haven't won in the previous 2 games against Woking and against Sutton. So they've got to try and get back to winning ways, having not won in the last 3. I think Eastleigh's the perfect team one of the perfect teams to be playing. They've not got a lot to play for. They do let goals in. They are hugely inconsistent. And because of that, I'm going with a Rochdale 3-1 win.
Yeah, I think you look at the playoffs overall at the moment, it feels like none of those sides actually want to finish inside them. For Halifax to be able to go 5 games without a win and to still be comfortably inside the playoffs, they've got a 4-point gap on Altrincham. Just says everything, Altrincham not on the best of form. Gateshead neither overall. Even Southend, for them to still be within a shot of finishing inside the playoffs, considering some of their inconsistency, even recently, for me, is the reason why it's just so open at the moment. And you speak about Tamworth, they're only 3 points behind 4 points, I should say, behind the playoffs at the moment. You can't write them off, and that tells you everything, I think, that you need to know about this playoff race at the moment. Moving on to the next fixture, Southend United versus Solihull Moors. I've spoke about where I could see Solihull getting that next win, and I don't think they'll be able to get another. I think they're going to struggle to be able to get another win this season. And this is one of the games where I just can't see it happening. Away from home at Southend, fighting for a playoff spot. It's a difficult place to go. Really hard place to actually win. I'm actually going to go for Southend 2-0 win. How do you see this going?
Yeah, I've gone for the same. Actually, you're right. Someone commented earlier, didn't they? That I think it was Colin suggested that these teams are going to cut each other's throats. And you look at Southend, their last game they drew with Sutton. You look at Rochdale, their last game they lost to Sutton. So Sutton, that's a prime example of a team that we don't think got much to play for, have taken points off of those that want to go into the playoffs. Solihull have to go into that. I think we can get something out of this. They need something out of it, because ultimately, if they don't and Boston pick up some points, they're going to drop even closer to that drop zone. If Wealdstone pick up some points, all of a sudden, Solihull are going to be 5th from bottom. And Southend is a tough place to go. We know they don't score many goals, but they don't let many in. They've only a +5 goal difference. So again, they've got to try and hope that is improved slightly if they're going to get into playoffs, because that could prove to be the difference and goal difference, like we suggested with Halifax. So I think Southend need to earmark this as a win for them, and a convincing win. And I think, like you, Luke, I think they're going to win 2-0.
Yeah, I think the same as well. I think for anyone at the moment, Solihull are there for the taking, and I think Southend will be able to get the job done and win 2-0. Moving on to the next one, Tamworth versus Braintree. Two sides that have had commendable seasons this year, particularly Tamworth, both looking like they're going to survive now. I think Braintree are more or less mathematically safe. As for Tamworth, still within a shot of finishing inside the playoffs. It's just an absolute joke for a club like that, I should say, when they've just come into the National League after having back-to-back promotions, for them to be within a shot of finishing inside the playoffs in the first season in the National League. Massive applause have to go to the management team and just the club as a whole, I think, at Tamworth. As for this one, though, quite a hard one to call. I think both sides are fairly strong defensively, and maybe a bit of a gut feeling, but I've actually gone for a 0-0 draw. How do you see this one going?
I've gone with a 3-1 Tamworth win. Tamworth at home, I've seen them play Wealdstone at home, and very, very effective. And they're not. They can score goals, Tamworth, that's for sure. They scored 3 against Dagenham. They've scored 2 against Gateshead. They've scored 2 against Eastleigh. They've scored against Maidenhead and Oldham when they've drawn and lost as well. So they've got a goal in them. Braintree, I think you're right. They're 51 points. We're talking around that sort of mark in terms of getting points. They're going to be hugely buoyed by the fact that they beat Barnet on Saturday. I mean, that was a great result for them. A real good result. And look, fair play to both teams. One's come from the National League South. One's come from the National League North. None of them have got standout players. Braintree maybe slightly more than Tamworth. But what they've proven is that they're a very good team. And they've got very good managers. And, I know Braintree did change their manager sort of halfway through the season. That has really helped them. Whereas, the likes of Solihull, maybe, who else changed their Dagenham, Dagenham and Hartlepool hasn't helped them as much. So a lot of credit must go to the players at Braintree, goes to obviously the board, the chairman. They made that move to change Angela Harrop. It's worked. And, this is a National League new boys match, and I think Tamworth will win 3-1.
Moving on to the next fixture, Woking versus Fylde. Fylde, we've said they need to pick about 11 points up to survive in the final 5 games, and for me, I can't see them doing that. Woking, I think you have to applaud Neil Ardley and his players after being able to react like they have done after being knocked out of the semi-final. They've put the focus all on the National League now. I think going away to Oldham midweek after losing in the semi-final in the way they did, to go there and win at a place like Oldham, I think you have to give them a lot of credit for that. And they've been so professional about it to go there. Moving on to this one, Fylde at home, Fylde out of form, can never gain any momentum. I think Woking will be fine. I think they'll win 2-1. How do you see it going?
I've gone with 2-0 for Woking to win. This will go a long way to making them safe. It will get them above the 50 points. I think it will go a long way to condemning Fylde back to the National League North. I think you're right. Neil Ardley has got them defensively very good, very tough to beat, very tough to break down, and they've got the ability to score 1 or 2 goals when they need it. And this is a game that they'll be earmarking, saying we've got to take some points out of Fylde just to kill Fylde off, but also to help them. So, I think Woking are going to go into that with a bit of confidence, dust themselves down, get the win like they did in the week, and make themselves safe in the National League for another season.
Next fixture, Yeovil versus Oldham. Yeovil losing last Saturday actually played very well. I watched that one. I was quite impressed, but I think to lose that game must be disappointing for them. But defensively very strong. They just don't particularly offer much going forward. I think it'd be a tough game for Oldham. They've had back-to-back defeats. I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see this going?
Yeah, I've gone for the same. Oldham have reverted to type, haven't they? And have just not been able to get to grips with trying to challenge Forest Green, York, and Barnet in that top 3. And if anything, they're holding on to 4th spot as we speak. But to lose to Woking in the week, I don't think fans are too happy. Tough place to go, Southend. We know that they lost to you, beat you boys, I think fairly convincingly. they just cannot get any sort of form going in terms of wanting to win games. And Yeovil will be tough. They're safe. They're not going down. Got a few issues off the field. The chairman deciding to step away and let someone else take it over. And let's see how that affects them going into the new season and what happens there. But for now, they're going to be safe in the National League. They've got to be pleased with their overall performance coming up from the National League South. They've got lots to build on. Oldham, I think, have just got to try and get a bit of form ready for the playoffs, and it's going to be an attritional 1-1 draw on Saturday.
Moving on to the next one then, and it is, of course, York versus Aldershot. I think this is another banana skin. Aldershot on a high after getting through the FA Trophy. Losing in midweek, maybe that's just themselves probably being hungover from actually winning on Saturday. But no, I think they've probably had the focus on the FA Trophy final and making their way to Wembley. As for this one, I think they'll be looking to be able to get a result here, and I think it's doable. I can see this being a bit of a banana skin for York. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going?
It's the highest scoring game for me. I've gone for York 3, Aldershot 2. York have to win. They have to win just to keep that little bit of pressure on Barnet. I know obviously Barnet are more than comfortable up the top there, but they've got to keep the pressure on Barnet any way they can. And if not, they've got to just stay there up the top, get a bit of form ready for the playoffs. Shots are a good football team, as we know. They've got to Wembley. Both are capable of scoring goals. I think it'd be quite an open game, and I think York will win 3-2.
Moving on to the final game, and of course, it's the 5:30 fixture between Forest Green Rovers and Gateshead. Two sides that have certainly been on mixed form. I feel like a broken record. I've said that about a lot of sides tonight. But, two sides that should comfortably finish inside the playoffs this season. Forest Green, it's gone off there, ironically, but Forest Green sitting third at the moment. I think they're pretty much sorted. I don't think they're going to be able to finish second, and I don't think anyone's going to be able to catch them. So they kind of know what they're going to be facing in the playoffs now. They know they're going to have a semi-final and a final. Of course, being at home for Forest Green, unbeaten all season, I can't see that changing. And as for Gateshead, I know they won at the weekend, and it was just about getting that first win in a long time, but I still think I don't particularly think they played that well against Dagenham, and I don't think they're back to their old selves yet. So I think Forest Green might win this one 2-0. How do you see it going, Paul?
I've gone with a Gateshead 2-1 win, only because Gateshead have more to play for than Forest Green. I think you're right. Forest Green, they've literally got nothing to play for until the playoffs gone. They're 9 points clear of Oldham. They're not going to catch York or Barnet, whereas Gateshead are still well in that mix of dropping out of the playoffs or cementing themselves in there. And I think that would just help them that little bit. Having seen Forest Green play last Saturday, I got the impression that's just how they were playing. They were comfortable. They were a good football team. But, were they at full throttle? Were they at 100%? It's really hard to tell. I don't feel that they probably were. And I think that might happen again on Saturday with Gateshead. Gateshead have got to win. Otherwise, they're going to be breathing down the necks of, Rochdale, Altrincham, Southend are going to be breathing down their necks. So more for Gateshead to go for. And I think because of that, they will win 2-1.
Fair enough then, and that wraps up all the predictions. Remember, you can play along as well. I know a lot of people have been getting involved in the live chat as well. Please remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. It does really go a long way, particularly if you do subscribe. If you haven't already, you won't miss when we upload either then, if you do subscribe to the podcast. These are the scores on the doors. Would you like to give your page another plug, Paul?
Nah, you're all right. Go on. You're fine. No.
Just do it. It's easier.
All right. Listen, if you want a holiday, National League takes a lot out of people. As I said, you want a break prior to the season starting again, please give us a shout. We do all sorts of holidays for all sorts of people, different ranges of time and places and accommodation types. We really can service anything. So please do give us a shout.
Now, we should be back next Thursday live again. Hopefully, I'll be with you and Paul will be with me as well. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye for now.